Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is enlightenment. And we're going to talk about how the notion of enlightenment relates to light and illumination and our experience of awakening and all that fun stuff. We're going to do a little bit of wordplay today. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating and electrifying all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling, the tingling, and presence yourself to that feeling and allow that to bring you into your body more fully into this experience of the moment through this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Happy Monday. And Rosalind says, good morning, Core Connectors. I love that. So today we're talking about enlightenment and really about the word as much as anything else, because we talk about enlightenment as a greater awareness, right? As a transformational state. Good morning, Kimberly. Welcome. So good to have you here with us. It's great to start off the week with you guys and whoever else is joining us. If you would like to add comments, go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and you can add your comments there. And because those are the ones that I see. And therefore, I'm able to respond. If you are putting comments in the chat and I'm not saying anything about them, it's not because you're being ignored. It's because I simply don't see them. So we're talking about enlightenment and illumination. And I think it's really interesting. We spent some time last week talking about light and shadow. And so Rosalind says, to me, it feels like something has been ignited. I love that. So when we think about igniting, that's also something that has to do with fire, which has to do with light, right? We talk about a spark of genius. I think that when there are certain biases around light and darkness, right? That if we're in the dark, we can't see clearly, right? This is, I just love language and wordplay. And we get to look at some of these biases because it's interesting when, for instance, I meditate, there's a pure darkness. And then sometimes lights come into that darkness. But it's from that space of nothingness that we associate darkness, the void, that all possibility arises, right, from the darkness. And yet we talk about being enlightened, like we're seeing more clearly, we're shining a light on something so that we can see it more clearly. And I don't know, sometimes when I walk around my apartment at night, there's a different quality to seeing in the darkness. Like I find myself feeling like there's vibration and there's movement in the air that I can almost see, or that I do see, or that I sense in a different way. And I'm wondering how much of this notion of enlightenment is tied to our physical seeing. When we talk about enlightenment in a spiritual context, we're talking about the veil being lifted from our eyes. Now we can see the reality of things, or we see so much more clearly. But it's beyond that, isn't it? Enlightenment, as we think of it in a spiritual context, is really about awareness. And I also want to talk about the physical aspect of light, like versus light versus heavy, for example. So when we think of enlightenment, typically we think of it in terms of being able to see more clearly. Good morning, Gia. How wonderful to have you here with us this morning. Happy Monday to you. And we're talking about enlightenment, but we think of light in terms of light and dark, and we also think of light in terms of light and heavy. And so when we talk about enlightenment, it's a lifting of a burden. We talk about the lifting of the veil, or lifting of burden, where we are feeling literally physically lighter. And I find it really interesting. I think I was talking last week. I've had the privilege to be talking with someone who is a Torah scholar, like has dedicated his life to studying ancient books, like books that are thousands of years old, literally, and gaining new perspectives on the meaning of so much of what we understand about the stories in the Bible, and the meaning of them, and the words. Good morning, Sophia. So good to have you joining us. Welcome. We're talking about enlightenment and the words around that, like what that actually means, and what it means for our context of living. Anyway, in talking to this fellow, he was talking about the first thing in the universe was light. And originally there was like black light and white light, apparently. And I may be destroying this, I may be misinterpreting. So please don't go and take this as gospel. Okay. And I don't even know if you'd find it anywhere, but that there were, before there was the sun and the moon, there was light. And so if, and even the concept of black light, we consider the blackness darkness, but what if that light, that black light, is the source of everything? I don't know if in the literature the white light emerges from the black light. I have no idea. But I just find this whole thing very, very fascinating when we talk about enlightenment in terms of consciousness, because we're shedding light. That's an interesting concept too, shedding light. So maybe, how do we shed light? We've heard a lot about shedding in context of viruses, right? But maybe we are light beings that shed light onto, literally, what if it were a literal thing? I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying let's play with that idea where we bestow light upon something through our attention or our focus, that we're directing some of our energy, some of the light that we are. And I kind of love that thought, that here, again, I had another meeting with this person on Sunday, and it's just so fascinating because it really talks the Torah in the interpretation that is what I'm inclined to be a more authentic interpretation. It really reflects so many of the ideas that we discuss here, and the nature of the universe, and it goes into quantum physics and source and beyond. It's so cool. I found the conversation to be so inspiring and uplifting, and so in alignment with the things we discuss. It was just mind-blowing. So when we talk about a lightness of being, right? What is this thing that we call enlightenment? And if we experience it, do we know that we're there? I'm wondering, is the space of enlightenment a place of pure presence where you're not even aware of not that, because it's all encompassing? I wonder. So Kimberly says, I like this. I believe we're light beings and we can shine our light and share our power of love. So thank you, Kimberly. I think it's a really cool idea too. So if what I was going around to is that in the tree of life, which is a foundation of, I guess, a foundation of the mystical understanding of the universe. And please, if I'm misrepresenting these things, please forgive me. This is a new arena, and I don't have the appropriate language necessarily. So I hope I'm not offending anybody or really torturing the notions here. But the tree of life is really talking about how we move from energy into being, into human form, into material existence, and this stepping down of energies. So like if we are light, what's happening, and I'm not necessarily relating this to the tree of life, this is again my interpretation, my understanding, but we step out from this very, very high frequency of light. This is what we've talked about in terms of manifesting, this high frequency of energy, and stepping it down, slowing it down into a vibration that makes us believe that physicalness is solid, right? That the material world is real, right? And we relate to it not as energy that's slower, but as something that's physical, making that distinction between physical and energetic. But what if it's all energetic, which is what I don't think there's a contradiction there. What if it's all energetic, and we really truly are beings of light, and we do really truly shed light on things that we put our attention to, as we're directing energy in that direction? What if we really are shedding light, or as Kimberly says, shining our light? What if there's that exchange of light and energy between us and whatever we're connecting to? I kind of love that idea, and it lets us understand why where we put our attention magnifies, right? Because we're giving it energy, like in a literal way, not figuratively. And so this is maybe why it's so important to be vigilant or alert to the things that we put our attention on, because what we're doing is we're creating an energy exchange with whatever we're putting that energy to, that it's literal. Rosalind says the human body and mind are like sensitive electronic equipment. We can connect to it practicing prolonged focus or concentration. If you can't hear the loud voice of your friend, how can you hear the whisper of your higher soul? That's beautiful, Rosalind. And I think it's not that we can't. It's more like that we won't. That we're deliberately, on some level, obscuring our awareness. Kimberly says, absolutely beautiful. So thank you, Kimberly. What do you think of this idea? If we recognize ourselves as energetic beings, and we are enlightening, shedding light on, adding light to, adding energy to whatever we interact with, then we can recognize ourselves as a flow of energy. One of the things that we talk about a lot is that ultimately who we are is life living itself through us. And we add all these overlays of identity and belief and behavior and predispositions and all of that, experiences, memory, conceptualization. We lay all of that over this place of experience, of flow, of life moving through us. And maybe, again, hypothesizing, maybe life itself is purely the movement of energy, the exchange of energy. So our emotions are very heightened experiences of energy. And when we experience the concentrated emotion, that generates a different frequency of energy. And based on this frequency of energy that we emit or that we vibrate in, we're shifting the energy that we bestow on the world, and it feeds back to us. It's creating this, maybe it's creating some kind of pipeline that's a feedback mechanism. So Kimberly says, practice, quiet down, pay attention to our body language, come from a place of love and kindness. Yeah, so as we recognize that we are truly energy and we're shedding light or directing energy onto everything that we that we make a focus of our attention, that if we can imagine that we're creating these energy pathways between ourselves and whatever we're directing our attention to, then it makes sense somehow that if we're angry, we're projecting that energy, we're creating a bandwidth of that angry energy. And if we lighten that energy, because I don't know, I know that there's a spectrum of light. And I don't know that when things are brighter, I don't know for sure that it's a higher frequency. I don't actually know that. But color all has its own space on the spectrum. And when we're making this energetic exchange, there can be, when we feel angry, when we feel frustrated, when we feel sad, there's a heaviness to it, right? If we enlighten that, if we lighten up what's happening, we're shifting the frequency, and we're maybe bringing literal light to that shift. I wonder if we start interacting with our experiences on a more energetic level, it may give us inroads to shift the experience of it, may give us inroads into shifting the experience of that weightiness of things, if we can literally see energetically how we can lighten up. I wonder, I think that one powerful aspect of an approach like that is that it enables us to get a little bit of distance from the immersion in the experience. And while I talk a lot about experiencing our experience, it also is very powerful to be able to stand back from that experience and to observe it as well. So there's the experience of it in our bodies and recognizing what's going on. And through that recognition and awareness, we allow those energetic patterns to diffuse, literally to diffuse. I've seen it a million times in the core connection work that I do, where being present to the experience without judgment and story allows it to dissolve. So that's putting like neutral attention on something rather than feeding it energy. This observational energy is kind of a neutralizer in a way, and it allows for the flow of that energy rather than the compression and condensing of it. Nicole says, grand rising, Mira. In the laws of Ma'at, the heart was measured on a scale and must be lighter than a feather. I've heard of that, and what a magnificent image. Nicole continues, the heart being light allows for greater expansion, and this is proven in the auric or energy field of the body. I love that, Nicole. I mean, that epitomizes what the conversation is, that we can bring focused light. We talk about a heavy heart and then lightening our burden, right? So I just love the way we can more deeply understand some of our experience when we dive into the wordplay around it. So Rosalind says, can the experience be blissful, ecstasy-like, without the drugs? What do you do with the excess energy? Absolutely, the experience can be blissful and ecstasy-like without drugs. No question. People are achieving that, particularly through meditation, all the time. And I think that when we allow ourselves presence It means moving through the resistance and the judgment and the stories. When we allow ourselves presence, then we're creating a gateway to be able to move into that blissful experience. And what do you do with the excess energy? So that's the thing. That's the core of it. And that's really the core. I think, it's easy to say, but maybe nowhere near as easy to master. But there is no excess energy. You just allow it to move. As you allow it to move, there's maybe the intensity of it, but as you allow it to move, it doesn't overfill. You can just be more of a channel. So as the energy increases, the thing that is really important is to release the resistance, right? Because it's the resistance that creates this over energy. There may be a lot flowing through, but it's the resistance that tries to impede it that then creates the problems, right? Like as an experience of over energy. There can be really intense energy, but the thing is to allow it to move through. What happens is that oftentimes that's scary because it's unfamiliar, right? And it's super intense. And so we tend to try and shut it down. And that's when there's all that over energy. So as we allow ourselves to be more present to the movement of that energy without trying to hold it, and just be a channel for it, a vehicle for it, then it can move through us and transform us. So Nicole says transmutations can happen too by practicing Saint Germain's violet flame. It can be seen with the third eye as purple light and can help us move through a heavy heart into a light one. And that's beautiful. So the purple flame in the third eye, I think if we allow ourselves to recognize ourselves as a channel for energy, that all of us is part of that. Like we are all this physicalized or solidified emanation of energy. When we can recognize that it's all vibrating, maybe we can move into harmonizing or allowing the harmonization of those frequencies. Maybe our organs have different frequencies from one another, and our chakras have different frequencies of vibration from one another. As we allow a harmonization of all these different frequencies, as we allow them to move and play and interplay with one another, then perhaps that will create a greater lightness. So to be looking at the places where there's a sticking point in our body, where we feel clenching, a resistance, compression, we can move through that more readily as we allow ourselves to sort of be the flow of that energy and that light. So anyway, that's our conversation for the morning about enlightenment, bringing light to our beingness. I think it's a wonderful thing to allow ourselves to move into awareness of ourselves as an energy. It shifts the whole conversation. It shifts the whole experience. So Nicole says, yes. Kimberly says, where can I find Saint Germain's violent flame practice? maybe you can make a suggestion. And Nicole says, yes, all the chakra lights combined create the rainbow body. This is known as the ancient yogis for ascension. And Kimberly says, great kickoff to a wonderful week. Thank you. Thank you. And I wish you all a wonderful week. And I just so appreciate these conversations and where they go, and just being engaged in these explorations with you. It's really fun and uplifting for me. So thank you. I hope it is for you. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I encourage you to check out all the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living and EWN One with the Earth. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this community with you. So until next time, so much love. And I hope to see you